Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinica Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Today's episode is brought to you by Your Clear Next Step in the Changemaker Certification Program.
Would you like to save time by solving the right problem sooner with a realistic and measurable plan? Reduce overwhelm by finding more sustainably productive ways to work? Improve employee morale by creating more positive workdays from within? Stay competitive by tightening your turn or increasing your agility in adapting to changing customer demands? If you said yes to those things, then we have the solution for you.
Interested in becoming a changemaker? Give us a call at 515-442-0545.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of the Even Better podcast. This is Sinica Waugh, and I am delighted that you chose to spend some time with us today. I am so excited to welcome our guest, Abby Martinez. Abby, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be so much fun. So I am just having a chance to meet Abby today, and we have not had a lot of time together, but I have already gleaned a couple of things. And so I'll share a little bit about Abby, but let me tell you what, for our listeners, let me tell you what I already know about Abby. I can already tell you that she is one of us, you guys. She is enthusiastic, and she is passionate, and she is committed, and she cares, and she's making a difference. And in this moment, in these few moments that we spent together, I can already tell you that she's quick to laugh, and she's quick with grace, and she is ready to show up. And as I heard just a little bit about her story already, I recognized her as one of those people who wants to be participating and wants to show up for others, not just in it for herself, not here to just do, hey, what can I get out of life, but how can I be here for others? How can I show up and serve? And she's doing things that are creating jobs for other people. And this is so cool. So we're going to learn more about Abby. She is an entrepreneur, and she's got multiple businesses here that she's working through. We'll let you hear more about that. She's here in Central Iowa. I know many of our listeners are right here in Central Iowa as well. And if you're listening to this here in the winter time in Central Iowa, just stay warm, do the best you can. But she is encouraging women, she's encouraging people to show up and to align their personal growth with personal fulfillment. And it is so much about being well-rounded. And I just love this, love this, love this. Authenticity is here. Purpose-driven success is here. Moving past burnout, beyond burnout, like be sustainable and be present. Love this. Abby, tell us more about you.
Yes, thank you so much for such a kind introduction. I'm very excited to be here. So yeah, my name's Abby Martinez, as you've already said, and I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur and a mom. I'm a leadership and business coach, and I have two businesses. So I own Well Balanced Business, which is an operations agency, and we support lots of small businesses with behind the scenes operations, systems, virtual assisting. And then I also have my coaching business where I help business owners and women with life, leadership, and business coaching. And really the purpose there is to help people make sure that their businesses feel aligned, that they feel really good inside as much as they look good on the outside. And sometimes, through our journeys, I feel like it can be easy to lose sight of what our purpose is or what we're supposed to be doing as we show up in our businesses day to day. There's a lot of noise out there, as we all know. So I like to help guide people back to kind of their true self in their business and aligning both of those. So that's just a little bit about me. I mentioned I'm also a mom. I have two kids and live here in Central Iowa as well.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, and what we've chosen to talk about today is the concept of self-leadership. Is that right, Abby?
Yes. Yep. Self-leadership and bringing in also the nervous system with that.
Outstanding. So as we think about this, I want to just invite our listeners to stop and think. Self-leadership does not require that you are in a leadership role. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be a business owner. You don't have to be a woman. You don't have to be in a leadership title to want to care about self-leadership. Is that fair?
Yeah, totally fair. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because I think often we hear the word leadership and we're like, oh, there's other people that I'm leading. But in reality, it comes to leading yourself, right? And leading yourself well, and showing up in a way that you're able to manage your time and your energy and your mindset so that you can show up fully for the things and the people that really matter the most to you, both in business and in life, whatever positions you're put in, right? So being able to lead yourself.
Yeah. And self-leadership isn't just, I'm so glad you said that, because it's not just about at work. It's in leadership, it's at work, it's in business, it's where you show up during the 9 to 5, if anyone has that, and at home and in life, and how you show up for your family, for your friends, for your community, for your church, for how you show up outside of the business day, if you will.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things I like to relate it to also is like radical self-responsibility. Like I think that's a huge part of self-leadership, taking ownership of the things that you're doing in your life, right? And like and the results that you want to create in your life, and making sure that yeah, that you're just taking ownership of the results that you want to create. I think that is part of self-leadership. So like you said, it doesn't just have to be in business, it doesn't have to be in your 9 to 5. It could be, I want to create a new result in my personal life. I want to, show up to exercise more. I want to drink more water. I want to have more patience with my children. All of those things come down to self-leadership and the way that you're setting yourself up for success, to be able to achieve those things.
Radical self-responsibility. I love that phrase. I love that phrase. Okay, so
Yes.
let's get into this. And you said it's also, you're going to talk about the nervous system. So why are we bringing the nervous system into this, Abby?
Yeah, so the nervous system, I feel like is kind of like one of those hot buzzwords right now. But for a reason, like the nervous system is so important when it comes to just like living your life, and also leadership and business, and just the way that you show up, right? So I think that it really sets the tone for how you lead. If you're regulated versus unregulated, being able to stay inside of your window of regulation really helps you stay focused, making better and clear decisions, and also helps you bounce back from stress, which is really important because our lives are so full and very stressful, and we come into contact with lots of different people. And depending on the state of our nervous system, where we could be dysregulated, whether we may be tending to be more in that fight or flight pattern, or maybe that like shutdown pattern, that affects how we show up in our day-to-day life. And so I think it's a really important part of taking care of ourselves so that we can show up in the way that we want to show up in the world.
You used a phrase a second ago. You used the phrase window of regulation. Can we pause there for a second?
Yes.
Is that something we have time to unpack?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if when you think about the window of regulation, it's really like that state where you feel like you are present, you are calm, you feel clear. And then, so the way that I kind of describe it is like if you were to put two lines parallel to each other, and inside of that, that's your window of regulation. And then if you go above the top line, that is when you get into more of that fight or flight. And if you go below the bottom line, that is when you go into more of that freeze response, or that dorsal vagal response, where you are in more of a shutdown response. And so people have a tendency to be more of one or the other. We can have both of those responses depending on what is happening in our life. But typically, you have one that is more that you are going to respond to more. So, like for myself, for example, like if I go out of my window of regulation, I tend to go more towards that fight or flight energy, a little bit more of like urgency, anxiety, stress, versus on the other side of that, you could be more of a shutdown. Like I can't access like, my emotions. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to get out of bed. And so those, different things throw us out of whack, out of our window of regulation. And it's different triggers for everyone. But the more that we can learn to come back into our window of regulation, the more we can show up as our best self, as our best leadership self, as our best business self, as our best parent self, because we can then access our clarity, our creativity, our highest self version that wants to lead in the way that we want to lead, right? Showing up in that way. So that's kind of a little bit of the science. There's so much science that goes into it. But the other thing I'll say too is with the nervous system, it is built for a reason. Like the fight or flight energy, or the shutdown energy, like those are built to keep us safe. But oftentimes we get stuck in one or the other, and that over time is not healthy for our bodies, for our minds, for living, really fulfilled lives. And so it's learning how to re-regulate when we get out of dysregulation. And on the flip side of that, the other thing is the goal is not to always be regulated. Like that's impossible. We're human. We're going to have triggers. We're going to have things that throw us out of regulation. The goal is to have the tools to be able to come back inside of that window of regulation.
So let's talk about that a little, the things that can throw us out of regulation. So I'm thinking about 2024, and I'll share some personal examples. 2024 was a let's use capital big year for me. It had some big things with big triggers for me. My mom passed away in 2024. We had some really significantly frustrating things that happened in the business with a big capital B for big. Frustrating, big triggers. And so those would, whenever thinking about them and when they happened, they would be things that would put me out of that window of regulation. That's probably not just what you're talking about, though. You're not talking about just life events like the loss of one's mom. You're probably also talking about smaller things. There are other things that take us out of that window of regulation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And throughout our day, every day, like we're going in and out, depending on the moment, right? It could be a small thing like your child yelling because their breakfast wasn't the right breakfast. Like I have little kids, so that's just an example of my life. I'm like, I just worked so hard on cooking that breakfast, right? And it's like all of a sudden they're being really loud, and that's something that's a trigger for me. So it could be small things throughout your day. It could be the car in front of you is not driving the way you want them to, right? That can throw you out of regulation. So it can be both the big things, the traumas of life. It could be the small things as well. And we're constantly kind of going through this wave of like being in regulation, being out of regulation throughout our day. So yes, both of those, big and small.
Okay, what about the good and the bad? Does good stuff take us out of our window of regulation as well?
Yes, such a good question. And an example of this in business is, and my personal example of something that really took me out of regulation is when I started my business. And because I started my business in 2020, and we know that a lot of businesses went online, our business kind of exploded right out of the gate, which was such a blessing and a gift. And also, it was very, very hard. You're laughing, maybe you can relate. But yeah, like it's a good thing. Like that was such a good thing for my family, for my life. And it was also, it had its downside. Like it totally threw me out of regulation because all of a sudden I went from being a business owner, just myself working with a few clients, to launching an agency and having a team and having, bigger income than I ever could have imagined our company making. It was just huge, like huge growth. And that, like I said, it's a good thing, but also like totally dysregulated me. I'm like, I didn't have the capacity at the time to hold that. And so it caused me to go into that fight or flight, which then caused me to have like other patterns over time, like for an extended period of time that didn't really support me until I, realized, oh, wait, I'm like really dysregulated. We got to, get some tools to be able to bring this back into place and be able to deal with the stresses of running a business and being a leader of people.
You bet. Okay. Great examples.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about let's bring this to we get the idea now of self-leadership is the ability to understand your, putting loose terms on it, it's probably more than this, but what we gleaned so far, self-leadership is the ability to understand your window of regulation, to show up, to manage your time, yourself, bring yourself so you get your best self, your best energy. I would use words like mindset as well, like what's your mindset, what's your focus there, and where are you? Do you want to grow? Do you want to keep getting better? Do you feel like you've got this is enough? And how are you? And now we've added this window of regulation. So do I understand where I am centered and best? Do I understand when I'm going above it or below it, and what's happening here? Now, recognizing in the moment is that, are there skills, are there tools to learn to recognize if I've gone outside of my window of regulation? And then you started to hint about maybe there are tools to get back in, but first, how do I know if I've gone, yikes? You alluded to something a second ago.
Yes. Yeah. So the different states have different signals to us that are like, yes, wait, I'm in fight or flight, right? So I had mentioned in my story, it was this feeling of like, it led to other patterns, and I couldn't maybe necessarily see it in that moment. But once I started learning and started getting the tools around regulating my nervous system through coaching and therapy, all of those tools have helped. But if you are in the fight or flight type of response where you're more of above that line, as you can see me, but the listeners can't, but like above that line out of regulation, this can create a sense of urgency, a sense of like deep anxiety. Like for me, it's like right here, a feeling in my chest of like, oh, I gotta like get it done. I gotta wake up and like hit the ground running and just like keep going and, multitasking, jumping from this to that. It's like this sense of I mean, urgency is the best way that I can explain it, and a lot of stress, right? So that's more of like, okay, I'm going to like keep going, keep pushing, even though I may be getting other signals in my body or outside things are telling me I actually maybe need to like slow it down a little bit, but I'm just going to keep going because that's the state that I'm in right now, right? And then on the flip side of that, if you go into more of like that shutdown, the dorsal vagal is what it's called. You are going to have like a little bit lose access to like your full range of emotion. You are going to feel a little bit more like on the downside where you're like immobilized, like you don't necessarily want to like get out of bed and get your day started, or like you just can't get it going, right? So those are two like I guess symptoms or like body signals of both of those different scenarios of fight or flight or the dorsal vagal response.
Yep. So I'm thinking bigger picture in my own experience, other symptoms that I might be able to add to the mix here for listeners. So I feel like when I am in that, I've gone to the fight or flight mode, that intensity. So you're using the word, the urgency. I would feel intensity, and I'm clenching my jaw just thinking about it. So I'm waking up in the morning with my jaw aches a little bit because I know I've ground my teeth at night. Yes. These are when the chasing dreams happen, or the missing the airplane dreams happen, or the get to the airport without my passport dreams happen. The hurry sensation, and that's probably an indicator that I'm probably in this mode, right?
Yes.
The can't stop, the inability, the restless, not to use the term restless leg syndrome, but the restless movements, the constant jitters, the can't sit stillness, the tapping,
Yes.
that sort of movement, I imagine is probably also fitting in this. Just as you're describing it, like,
Yes.
okay, yep, I see what's going on here, and the pacing and the fast talking unnecessarily. I'm usually a fast talker, but faster and more.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, the now my whole body just stops, right? The I don't know where to start. The don't wanna, the meh,
Yes.
it's not fun. It's not interesting. The things that used to be things that I used to be able to do, even the start stops me because
Yes.
I've shut down in that. Okay.
Yeah, those are great examples. Yes.
Okay, recognizing that. So those
Yeah.
I can recognize in the morning or in the greater passage of my day. I think you hinted at being able to maybe recognize them even in the moment. Like you're I have two daughters, they're 19 and 21, so they don't complain about the food as much. Still sometimes, but not as much. And then they just fix it for themselves if they didn't like what I fixed. But in the moment, how do you recognize in the moment that you might have gotten outside of that window?
Yeah, I think it comes back to like the self-awareness and starting to pay attention. It's not an overnight, like, oh, I'm going to recognize I'm in this right now. It is a practice of pausing and checking in with yourself. And we often forget to do that because our days are so filled and busy. One of the beautiful things I think about the nervous system, like the nervous system itself is a complex thing, right? It's like a complex scientific thing that you have to learn about I mean, you don't have to learn about it, but if you wanted to learn about it, you can. But
So
the
complex.
beautiful thing is that the practices can be really simple. It's just the remembering to do the practices. It's the checking, like if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I've never really actually thought about my nervous system in this way. It's like pausing to be like, oh yeah, like I actually tend to be more fight or flight or that urgency, or, oh wait, no, I can really relate to my state. My go-to state may be more of that shutdown state. Okay. And then being able to check in with yourself throughout the day. Where am I feeling right now? How am I feeling? And then bringing yourself back into or using your tools to try to re-regulate. Now, it's not like a magic wand. If you may use a tool, you still may feel out of regulation. Like the point is not perfection, but the point is to continue to use the tools over time, so that you can create more regulation in your life and be able to bounce back faster. It's not about bouncing back as fast as you can. It's about changing the way, like how much time you're spending outside of regulation over time. That should lessen. You should be able to have tools if you're practicing them to be able to come back into regulation faster. The other thing is you want to make sure that as you're checking in with yourself, especially when you're in a position of leadership, I think it applies to all life, but when you're leading other people and the choices and the words and the things that you do really impact others, it is important to pause, check in with yourself, say, where am I right now? Like, am I responding from a place of fight or flight? Or am I responding from a place of true clarity around how I want to show up and be a leader, right? Now, again, it's not perfection. Like, you are going to have moments, you're a human, where you're going to respond in a way that you don't want to respond. It's recognizing that, it's taking radical responsibility to own what happened in that scenario, and then trying to do better the next time. Use your tools, right? To be able to bring yourself back into regulation. Wait before you send the message to the person if you're dysregulated, right? Like, it's just simple practices, and just having the awareness and the pause to check in with yourself is what makes the difference.
Yeah. So I'm anxious to see what tools you offer. One of the tools that I have long offered in my facilitation techniques and in my mindfulness stuff that I teach and in the various classes is simply to have constantly just have beverage. It's usually water. Just have water with you. Have water with you. Always have water with you. And even I recommend having it in an opaque container, because even if it runs out, even if we should be hydrating, like keep hydrated. It's better for us. But even when it runs out, you can pretend to take a sip and give yourself those moments. Like, just give yourself a second, just take a sip of water. And even if your water is empty, take a sip of something to give yourself that something, give yourself those few seconds to just, I didn't use the word regulate or get into the window of regulation. I did not use those words. I didn't know those words. I'm learning these words right now, but to just give yourself a second, just get inside your head so you can get outside your head. And
yes.
Yeah. So I love this. So tell me what tools do you have? So what tools can you offer for regulation?
Yes, absolutely. So depending on what state you're in, there are different tools you can access. Whether you're in fight or flight or you're in the shutdown mode, deep breathing is always a really good one. So like pausing, doing some different types of breathing exercises. You could do box breathing, where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and you just repeat that, right? Like, there's different breathing exercises. But when in doubt, like, just come back to your breath, pause, take a few breaths, give yourself some moments to, get back in that space. Like you said, with the water, right? It's just like that pause, like even drinking water, you're still going to be breathing while you're doing it, but it's an intentional action, right? So that's something that is good no matter what state you're in. Movement breaks, right? Like, get up from your desk or get up from wherever you are, like, do some simple stretching or walk around the block if it's nice enough. Don't do that today, but if it's nice enough outside, take a little walk around the block or walk down the hall if you're in, if you work in an office. That can be really, really helpful as well. One of my favorite ways, because I tend to be more fight or flight, and that it almost gives me the feeling of like I drank 5 cups of coffee and like I'm just like, oh, like this jittery. Like, that's how I feel when I'm in fight or flight. So to diffuse some of that energy, a simple tool is just to shake. So stand up, shake it out a little bit to diffuse some of that energy, and that can help you feel a little bit more grounded. And just get some of that, anxious feeling out of your body. Yes, exactly. It sounds silly. Like, you may feel silly doing it, but it really, really helps. And then if you are, if you tend to be more in that shutdown, what you want to do is upregulate your system versus fight or flight. You want to downregulate. So upregulating your system, one of the really good tools that you could use is just sitting where you're at and accessing your senses. So like starting to look around the room. The wall is white. The computer is gray. My coffee cup is green. My phone is green. Just becoming aware of what's around you helps you come back into your body, which then helps upregulate your system to be able to get back into that zone of regulation or closer to it, which again helps you access your full self.
Oh, I love that. Love that. So these are not things that require advanced degrees to do.
Exactly. It's simple. Like neuroscience, yes, advanced degree for sure. But just learning the basics of your nervous system, learning the basics of the tools can really transform the way that you show up day in and day out, and also how you feel. It's not just how you're showing up for others, but it's about how you feel internally, which we know when we feel in a really good place, we can then lead from that place in a really good way.
Right. So, and the risk of not, right? We follow the same scenario, a fictional scenario, but you can play it out a couple of different ways. Someone has just done something. Someone has just said something dumb or offhanded or some silly comment, and it triggered us. It did something that caused us to have a reaction that took us out of our window of regulation. And whether we went to fight or flight, or whether we went to shut down, we're having an emotional or a response, right? We're having a response that's not our normal regulated, this is how we best show up self response. And if you follow that through and we let ourselves do that, the output, if we say something harsh, we say something critical, we say something flippant, we say something snide, we say something offhanded, the ripple effect of that could be really, really harsh, right? You can't take those words back. And it could be so heartbreaking. If we say it to a child in our household, we say it to a colleague that we didn't mean, we say it to a leader, and we close doors to our career progression that we did not mean to close. We say it offhanded, even if we think we're being funny, and someone says, wow, that person is not promotable. Yikes. We've closed doors. But we've shut down, we miss out on the opportunity to speak up. We miss out on the opportunity to be kind. We miss out on the opportunity to defend justice or to do the thing that was right in the moment. Play it the other way. Give yourself a second to regulate, and now show up as your best self, the person that we want to be, the person that we know we are inside, that is kind-hearted and does care and does want the best for the people around us. And that person is the one who gets to show up. And that person is the one who gets to lead with authenticity. What a better day for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. And how often do we see the flip side of that, right? Like the short fuse with the car, the short fuse with somebody saying something that does offend us, right? And every day we get a choice. We get a choice in how we show up. And I will also come back to this. I will always say this, like, we're all human. We're all going to have those moments where we say the thing that we didn't mean to say, or we react in the way because we were triggered, right? The best thing that we can do in those moments is radical self-responsibility. What do I need to do to repair this? Who do I need to say something to, right? How do I need to calm myself or re-regulate myself first before I take my next action, so that it is more aligned with who I want to be as a leader, who I want to be as a person. So again, the goal is not perfection. We're all going to make mistakes. It's owning those mistakes and taking that personal responsibility.
You've said that a couple of times now. The goal is not perfection. I always like to think that perfection is a direction, not a destination, right? It's where we're headed. We'll never get there, but it's where we're headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So how do I get better? How do I get better at anticipating? Is there a way to anticipate what's going to tick me off or shut me down?
Well, I think part of that comes to self-awareness and like taking this time to slow down and reflect. Like if you were to pause right now and reflect on your work, right? Like what are things that are causing you stress right now? What are things that maybe, if you are leading teams, like what are things within that you already know if you go into a meeting and someone says X, Y, and Z, it's going to set you off in this way, right? So examining those things, being aware of like, oh wait, I already know these things are going to set me off in this way, and being proactive in how am I going to handle this? Like, what do I need to set myself up for this conversation or for this meeting or for this breakfast time with my 3-year-old who doesn't want to eat her toast or whatever, right? Like it's just being proactive in that way mentally can really help set the tone for how you're showing up. And then also knowing like someone may say something in that moment, even if you come in prepared. Again, we're human. Someone could say something and it's still going to send us out of regulation. And so in those moments, having the tools to say, okay, I need to either set a boundary here. I need to say, I'm going to come back to that and respond when I'm in a better state to respond. I think that's good leadership. Like people see that in you. Like, okay, we're human. I have an emotion here, and I'm going to take a moment before I respond to that. I'm going to circle back with you on that. I think it's, again, coming back to just that self-awareness, and the way that you want to show up in your leadership, and trying to put that at the forefront, and then giving yourself grace when it doesn't happen and repairing.
Yeah. Okay. So you've said something that's really interesting here that I want to pause on, and I want to make sure that we spend just a little bit of time on this, because anticipating, knowing that it could happen and knowing that it probably will happen isn't the same as giving ourselves excuses for bad behavior. And I want to dig in here, because sometimes we run the risk of saying to ourselves, well, I know that if that person says XYZ, it's going to just tick me off. Or I know that if that person does ABC behavior, that I'm just going to shut down. Okay, fair. Self-awareness. I know that I have a habit of getting ticked off when that happens. I know that I have a habit of getting shut down when that happens. And my commitment to a growth mindset, my commitment to even better, my commitment to self-regulation, my commitment to this whole concept of self-leadership, of doing better, says, I have had that habit before, and I'm going to engage one of these tools to do something different this time. This time I'm going to come equipped with a self-hug. I'm going to come equipped with the willingness to say, I'm going to come back to that, with the willingness to say, instead of answering that, I'm going to jot something down right now, or I'm going to stand up and shake it off before I answer, or I'm going to take a sip of water. I'm going to breathe deeply. I'm going to say, can I have a second? Or let's come back to that. I'm going to do something different rather than let the same old behaviors allow me to fall into the same old habits.
Yes. Yeah. That's such a good way to like put that into words. I think again, it comes back to that radical self-responsibility. We cannot control what others are going to do, what they're going to say, how they're going to show up, but we can work to control how we show up and respond in those situations, right? And that's part of that self-awareness and self-leadership is, how do I want to respond in these situations? Just as you were saying, like, and also the awareness to be like, I know that these things may happen in this meeting, right? Like taking the moment to, instead of just going in it, just like running in and then being retroactive, it's like being proactive. Like this could happen and this is how I want to respond. This is the leader I want to be in this moment. And again, leader doesn't have to be leader of people. It could be leader in your home, could be leader in your church community. Just how do I want to show up in that way, and being proactive to create the results that you want.
Yeah. And I love your point about grace, and we're human, right? We're going to mess up. They don't call it human error for nothing. We're going to mess up, and that's okay too. And if we're making the honest attempt to try, if we're honestly reflecting and with good intention, committed to doing better, then we're going to reflect on it. We're going to apologize for it. We're going to commit to doing better. We're going to own it, take accountability for messing up, and commit to doing better, even better next time.
Yes. Exactly. And that makes all the difference. Like, again, you don't have to be perfect, but just keep working at it and 1% better, right? Like James Clear says, 1% better each day.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. So if we were to put a bow on this, if we were to wrap it up, and is there a call to action here? Is there a way to tie this all up with a beautiful bow?
Yeah, I think part of it is just remembering, like, why does this matter? Like, why does it matter to show up in the way that you want to show up, and why does self-leadership matter? So really rooting it in like your why, like, why do I want to show up in this way? Starting small, like it's okay. It's not, again, no perfection here. Like it's okay to make mistakes, have grace for yourself, but start asking yourself, where am I in this moment? Like how am I feeling emotionally? Am I here? Like, am I physically here? Am I present? Or am I thinking about the 20 next things that I have to do? Because that in itself is dysregulating, right? So bringing it back to this moment, being able to use some of the tools. Again, if you forget any of the tools that we said today, just come back to your breath, like do some box breathing, breathe in, hold it, breathe out, breathe in, hold it, breathe out. Just bringing yourself back into the moment can really help. And again, just giving yourself grace as you learn, these tools to be able to better regulate yourself, which therefore better lead yourself and others.
That's beautiful. Thank you. You said come back to the breath, and I'm a person of really, really deep faith. And historically, the name of God, I am of the Judeo-Christian tradition, and the name of God, Yahweh, is like breathing in and of itself. And it's like breathe in, breathe out. And if you have nothing else, call on the name of God. And that has been a foundation for me. Breathe in, breathe out.
I love that. That's so beautiful.
So there's that. So if nothing else, go back to breathing. Go back to the very breath of life.
Yes.
So thank you. This would not be the Even Better the podcast though if I didn't ask you, what's making you even better these days, Abby?
Oh, I love that question. One of the things that I'm really, really focused on, because I tend to be forward thinking, is intentionality and being present. So nothing happens outside of the present moment. Being in the moment that you're in is like where life is. And so being able to stay in the present is really, one of the things that I'm working on.
Lovely. And how is that work going for you?
Yeah, it's it can be challenging, but again, it's like just having the awareness of, oh, I'm not here right now. My brain is all the way over there. Like I need to get back here, right? So it's looking around the room that my plant is green, just remembering to do the practice. It takes time, but definitely worth it.
My recollection is that the powers of a 3-year-old will help you stay in the moment.
100%. Yes. We've got the blocks. We've got the Barbies. We're right here doing it all. Yes.
We're with hands on both sides of your face going, we are here now.
Yes. Yeah. It's so beautiful and so trying at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, what a joy. Abby, thank you so much for sharing this time with us today. I'm so grateful.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was a wonderful conversation.
Likewise, this has been great. If our listeners want to find you, of course, they can reach out to us and we will connect them with you. But what's the best way for them to find you and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on my website, abbymartinezcoaching.com. You could also find our agency website at wellbalancedbusiness.com. And both of those are on Instagram as well. So you can come follow us there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us and for this wonderful insight. And if you are just now dialing in and listening to it, or you got distracted along the way, you got to go back to the beginning because this was great stuff. There was good stuff in here. Bookmark this one, listen to this one again. And if you are in the habit of listening to the Even Better podcast, we invite you to leave us a review, to share this with your friends, because it is the word of mouth that helps spread podcasts. And we are so grateful to our listeners. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.